taking a very, very rightward turn because
on Tuesday.
this is the first time that we've
Okay,
ever
cool.
had a
Well, I do a lot of.
Republican
I was at
thing.
the.
General
Harvard
Assembly
Embassy
for the first time since like
Yeah,
before
no, in
Reconstruction.
Brooklyn.
They've like
Last one.
They're
I was at the one in LA too.
attacking
The
every single thing that
the
was
Manifest
like,
Justice.
ever, like,
Yeah, I had some work in it.
ever built. So it's been great to see like this like generational alliance of like people coming together and like
Something.
yeah.
I'm not.
That's what
I did this. Okay, let me show you. I did these projects
Before.
called Exhibit B, where we transformed this here in New Orleans. There was this abandoned apartment complex.
Making it easier for people to.
Wait.
We're gonna.
No. What do you know? You heard bad things
No,
about
I heard good things. I've been meaning to try to go see it.
this.
Oh, I hate you.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of
Jordan.
there's also a lot of amazing things going on right now. So
Okay, we jumped into
I was about to say we came in at the wrong
Remember
point.
the apartment building I was telling you about that got transformed? He did that.
Yeah, y'all should come see it. It's on the West Wing.
How far is it? Oh, that's so.
It's
You know, you could have asked me to help.
so you're a fellow.
it was more than 200 miles.
I know that's all I do.
I was looking at
You could do back like this little kid
I
was
don't know what
eight.
you're doing, but whatever you're doing, you need to apply.
I was looking at the fellows. A friend of mine posted about it, and
It's
then I was
like-
going to be like the fellows, and I was like, wait,
not
the name
far.
sounded very nice. Or we were in the same panel, so I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's like a drive.
We talk about another crazy. You might want to tell them that.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
But no, it's like it's
Yeah.
maybe like 10 minutes.
So what do you work?
Yeah, it's not far. In by car.
So I just finished school, and
It took 3
Undergrad? Or
yeah, undergrad.
from the 1st to the
So right now,
15th
kind of, I don't know what I'm.
of November
Hopefully,
last
I
year.
think I'll
So 15
know
days.
by the end of this month.
Yeah.
I've been applying.
I mean,
for
it's not
jobs. That was
officially
also
up 'cause
kind
it's
of
like-
great because school is
Well,
very intense.
there was a point. There was a window of time we got it officially
So,
open,
yeah,
like when
I'm
people
waiting
could come
to
in
get
on
back to
Saturdays.
some jobs and
So it's like from February 19th, it was
Well,
open
if
to the
you,
public.
whenever,
February 19th, it was
well,
open
if
to the
you,
public.
whenever you're ready to start.
Our understanding was that after, as it was told to us, was that after the 19th, construction would start, and then we would no longer have it available.
Yeah, I was
But
reading about it.
after it ended,
How did
construction
you
didn't start,
get
so
involved with
it's
it?
still
Well, I
up,
went to
but it's
business
not like
school
completely open to the public.
to start.
I've seen pictures.
In the
What's up, sir?
economic justice space,
Can't complain.
basically
Good to see
helping,
you.
making it easier for people
Yeah, y'all should definitely check it out.
to find better jobs. And so when I was in
That's a
business school,
dope, whatever that is. Yeah.
this is what I wanted to do. And so I applied.
That could be part of the talk.
Really
You just have it
enabled
on.
me to just
Be
focus
as
on
some
this.
type of.
I'll think about that next time.
Cool.
It could be
how
your
long
thing.
Is it like a year-long fellowship?
It's 2 years generally. So they have a couple of different cohorts. They have the Black Men Achievement, which I'm a part of. They have the Global Fellows, which is people anywhere around the world working on anything that has impact, and they have the Climate Fellows. So most of those are for 2 years. The Black Male Achievement, you get financial assistance for 18 months, but you get
It's,
the supportive experience for 2 years.
Yeah. No, that's the Instagram. The Twitter.
So I just
Do
wrapped
I
up my
even?
first year going into
Oh yeah, I do. It's 2 cent, 2 cent. I can't spell.
look it up.
Underscore be Mike.
It's-
BMIKE.
What it does is it helps you, it gives you hope that like, oh, if I want to go
number
and
2.
build my own things,
Number 2
here's a great
CENT
organization that will.
underscore BMIKE.
Super selective, but it's an amazing.
It's just a 2 cent.
You meet a lot of amazing social entrepreneurs from all over the world.
What's up, Mike?
That I think is the community is the biggest.
Bow tie, shorty. What's up, boy? What's good? I can't complain. You're busy, huh? You just had a born day, huh? You just had another year of life. Congratulations. Man, it's a bunch of stuff, man. Oh, today I don't even know. We're about to find out. Yeah, I got some stuff I need to talk to you about.
Well, the way my Wi-Fi is set up, I can't find you right now.
Let me- I think it should pull up. I wish I drunk coffee.
It saves lives, not my life, but I save lives.
in
from
Boston.
New Orleans.
From New
I
York.
think just a little
Is
bit.
this your first time in New York?
I just don't. I don't know. I never grew up around this, so I guess I never really.
I think it's an acquired
This is my first time.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about the conference and about the city.
No, they want us to be down somewhere more.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
How you doing, Big Mike Brandon? What's up, sir? Good to see you as well. How cool. It's all home to my Alex. What's your name?
Emilio,
Emilio? Nice to meet you, man.
and you're
Brandon.
Crazy. I love the energy.
So give it a moment. I'll discover it.
Huh?
That is totally yours.
So on your right,
Ladies and gentlemen, there are a few seats that are in the way of the tape recording. So if we are in the way, we're going to ask you to move chairs. There's a few extra chairs, and if we have to put some more chairs in the back, we'll do that for recording purposes. Watch his coffee. It's little seriousness, little joke. Little mix. Make everybody feel good in the morning. All right, everybody doing? There we go. You're all hooked up?
Yep, everything's good.
Debatable.
Everybody? Me too?
You don't have to sit on them.
I'm just joking. But I'm not important.
I know him.
All my people up in there. New Orleans is in the building. I'm gonna have to say who do who.
Somebody bring the bread pudding.
Who brings bread pudding? I don't think that's something people bring. Is that
It's important to me.
bread pudding? I never got that email.
I
Or
will
the
make sure
tweet.
you get the memo.
Thank you. Bring bread. Look, personal. Bring
well, the fellowship
See, you
ended,
have
so I was
answers.
actually there in DC when it went.
Okay. Oh, so it was on so like you stayed.
pudding. Is
Yeah.
such a fun
But I still work with them.
Pudding.
So we still stay engaged. So anytime I'm a little where are you?
DC.
What is that shirt for?
Yeah,
What is the shirt for?
so much for honest virtual.
Ah, it's
So
dope.
we're able to kind of like our
What have you done today?
when you're on things like this, you always tell
There you
Our
go.
office is on.
Oh yeah, like right down the street.
Pick them back up.
somebody right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're like
Leonova. Leonova. Myself. Yeah.
I'm doing it now.
but I know the big ones.
I'm about to read
I
it too.
totally tweeted it.
My CVS.
Yeah, I mean it's CVS. I feel like I go to that CVS 4 times a day.
I know it's dangerous.
All right. Don't close the door.
How long is this supposed to?
But that would be funny because I would go to sleep.
I see trees of green, red roses too.
Oh.
I see them bloom,
Can't give me a microphone.
and I think to myself, What a wonderful world. Oh, yeah.
That's beautiful.
All right, everybody, we're going to get started. We're going to get started in a second. That's my superpower, Louis Armstrong. All right. So this is the Show Me Your Assets panel. I'm just joking. Melissa's like, take the microphone away from him. This is Leaders of the New School panel. And so the goal is for you not to hear my voice that much, if at all, during the session. It's an opportunity for us to hear a group of leaders from the new school, but also complicate what we see as how do we sustain voices of new folks in the space, and how do we take the learnings from them, but also take their learnings, but also expand in opportunities from a capacity standpoint. And so I'll be asking them some framing questions, and then I would love if you can go on the hashtag AGOL and submit your questions and try to get people to join the live stream. And so I'll start. The first kind of question is asking them to introduce themselves, and I'll start with Brandon. And then and introduce yourself, and then reflect on this morning's conversation. Or the conversation this morning was on intersections. What does intersection mean to you as a new leader?
Okay, I feel like I'm a little bit inadequate to answer that because I was running late this morning. But my name is Brandon B. Mike Odoms. I'm so sorry. Filmmaker. I'm from New Orleans, the great filmmaker. I'm from New Orleans, the greatest city on the planet. And I started an organization called Two Cent in college. And basically, we just choose to use our various mediums of gifts to respond to the needs of our community in the intersection between education and entertainment, pop culture, social awareness. So yeah.
Same question?
Yes.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jamira Burley, and I am professionally, my title is Senior Campaigner at Amnesty International, where I lead on gun violence and criminal justice issues. But I think overall, the work that I do is centered around how do we elevate the voices of the most impacted and at the margin of society, as well as how do we create platforms for people to be able to use their voice to create change. And on this morning conversation, I would say the biggest thing or takeaway I got is that there's a lot of work to be done. There's no silver bullet, I guess, to solve it all. But I think if we recognize that we're all here with the same kind of core goals, which is to create a world that is both just and fair for everyone, I think we can build off of that versus trying to pick apart where we disagree.
Hey everyone, my name is Emilio. I'm from North Carolina. I just graduated from college. My brief story is that I'm undocumented, and I've been really involved in immigration advocacy because I think hopefully like all of you that immigration are human rights, and that immigrants, undocumented immigrants specifically, should be treated as humans and should be given those protections and rights. I was very involved on my campus on raising awareness on what it means to be undocumented, all of the issues that one faces. I think this morning's panel was very, very important in terms of intersection, because usually when we think of intersection, we think of we look at who someone is, but also through like a very broad lens, and I think that's very important because I'm undocumented, but that's not the only thing affecting me. I'm also queer, and that's something that like every day, especially in the South, I'd say, something that you have to confront every day. And so like when I'm advocating for immigration, I just can't advocate for just immigration. I also have to advocate for the inclusion of undocumented immigrants who are queer, who are in detention, who are being treated worse because of these different identities that they have. And so I think like this morning's panel was emphasizing like the more critical need of looking at these issues through a very broad lens, because we can't tackle racism without looking at all of these other things, because they're interconnected, and like you can't just specifically focus on an issue without realizing that someone isn't just a one-issue person or a one-issue. Yeah.
My name is Iscaida Jimenez. Personally, I am a Dominican immigrant. I grew up in the Bronx, also one of the greatest cities in the world. I do live in Boston now, and professionally, I'm building labor exchange. you can think of it as a LinkedIn for the linked out. So we help people with non-traditional backgrounds. So immigrants, veterans, people without 4-year degrees, single moms, connect to living wage jobs, to better jobs. And what intersectionality means to me, I move in a lot of spaces because of the education that I was lucky enough to receive, where I'm always, you know, the only woman, because I'm an entrepreneur. Usually it's very male dominated. I'm the only person of color. I'm the only immigrant. I'm the only person with a working class background. And it's really frustrating to have to choose one of those battles when I go into these micro communities. And so it was really, you know, really great for me to hear that conversation today and to feel like, you know what, I don't have to choose. I'm going to fight every single battle in every room that I go to. So that's kind of what that panel left me thinking.
Don Shu, my name is Joaquin Gallegos. I'm from the Jicarilla Apache Nation and the Pueblo of Santa Ana. And I'm here with the Center for Native American Youth, which is a policy program at the Aspen Institute in Washington, D.C. It was founded by former Senator Byron Dorgan to really elevate the needs and priorities of Native youth in this country, who are often neglected, if not fully left out of broader race policy discussions. And so it really has become the premier organization advocating for Native youth at the federal, state, and local levels, and has really expanded upon that with the Obama administration and their efforts. And I think this morning's dialogue was extremely impactful for me because, as I said, Native youth are largely left out of the agenda, and so where can we build connections and find focus, the opportunities for growth with each other? Our founder, Senator Dorgan, often says that I don't know what people's second or third priorities are, but I know what their first priority is, and that's their children. And that's the same for Native American communities as well, just like everybody else. So how can we build upon those needs that we all share?
Jameer, what started you on your path? Like, what made you opt in to being a leader?
Opt in, yeah, I'm totally about to opt out. But well, first I will say that I'm from Philly, and that is the best city in the world. But, you know, no shade to the rest of the table. But I guess I got involved very much from a place of need. When I was 15 years old, well, first I should start off. I'm one of 16 children, so I have 10 older brothers and 5 younger brothers and sisters. So if anyone is looking for a sibling, I give them away. But when I was 15 years old, I was at a very interesting time. It was the year that my brother, who was 20 years old, was shot and killed in Philly, but also the year that my father was convicted of murder. So I was in between knowing a victim and knowing a perpetrator. And those two events kind of opened my eyes to not only the issues that were impacting people that look like me, but also the intersectionality of both the criminal justice system as well as violence in urban communities. And so through that experience, I was able to get connected to a lot of adults who told me that I could either continue to be a victim or I can actually do something about it and use my experience as the building block to inform a system that was broken. And so through that work, I've now been able to really engage not just policymakers, but also young people who feel like for a long time that they're the only ones experiencing their circumstances, and that there are other people who have experienced similar circumstances and have been able to rise above it and to really create adequate change. So I think for me, it's always been from a place of need and a place of, if I don't do it, who else will?
And Brandon, do you want to say be Mike? What are the unique ways in which you see your peers leading? Like, so instead of, I can see in prior generations leading held a very firm description, like either standing up and giving a speech or leading a march. But it seems like this generation's leading in new and different and creative ways. Can you talk about the ways that you've seen this generation lead, but also like you see it going forward?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of it is just the understanding of the tools that we have. And I think we do a program, a summer program, we teach young people how to use social media, use the media in general as a weapon. And we teach them that a camera is a weapon, and you need to think about it that way. And I think that And we also teach them, like, what would Dr. King do if he had Twitter? Or what would Malcolm X do if he had access to a recording studio? You know what I mean? It's like these are ideas and tools that you don't think about in that way traditionally, but it's like young people, the leaders are the ones who are thinking about it that way. They're thinking about their tweets as tools, as weapons. They're thinking about their video content as weapons. They're thinking about their Instagram posts, you know. So I think that is in my opinion, the way that a lot of young people are leading with these new tools, and they're courageous enough to say that, you know, that we understand the responsibility that was instilled upon us from our elders, and we're gonna remix it, if you will. You know, it's hip hop. It's the idea of turning nothing into something. It's the idea of transformation. It's all these things combined into all the things that inspire us. And, you know, there's a Mos Def lyric that said, "I was taught if there's something you can change around, be quiet. You got nothing to complain about. You got work to do." And it's that mindset that I think a lot of young people are taking as like, you know, we're not going to complain. We're going to work. Like his shirt says, do something. Yeah.
What's next after that? Like, so if as people opt in and they're doing something, how do you see institutions using that power and that energy? Like, what are ways you can maybe even articulate it as barriers? So if a young person opts in and says, hey, like, I am going to create a mixtape, what are ways that you see institutions needing to change to kind of bring in those young people?
I think as a visual artist and as an artist in general, I think a lot of ways it's about inclusion on the front end. You know, I think that a lot of ways traditionally, a lot of organizations, a lot of people who are trying to do good work, they include this in the latter part of their process. You know, they come on the table and they figure out how to like create ideas and how to figure out how to do policy, and then at the last part of it, they'll include the artist or the young person that can articulate what they spent time in the table working on. I think a lot of what needs to be done is including these individuals on the front end, including the young people on the front end, including the artists on the front end. Don't just give an artist the ideas and say, okay, interpret that into some visual image. Include them in the beginning and watch what happens, and you'll be able to see how not only how does it affect the process and how does it affect the results, but also how it just makes it look better and make it sound better and make it more, you know, like makes it cooler, you know? Yeah.
And if you all want to comment as well?
So I think your first, like the question that you asked was like you know, young people and how they're coming, or like the new crops of young people. I think one of the really amazing things about like a lot of activists, younger activists, is that we're realizing that all of the issues that we're advocating for, say immigration, say criminal justice reform, all of these different issues are interconnected, and it's amazing to see all of these like different groups coming together and realizing that there's like so much intersection, and that you can't advocate for one issue without advocating for another issue. A really good example of that was when Black Lives Matter interrupted Bernie Sanders at Netroots. Were any of you at Netroots? No. So Netroots is a big convening of progressive activists who do a lot of digital organizing. It's heavily, majority of the people who go there are white liberals, and so I think it's very important in spaces when we talk about like progressive values, whatever those values are, that we ensure that the people most affected by any issues are centered, say Black people, because like the issues that they affect are much more like I'd say present than the issues that affect other communities. And so it was amazing to see a very diverse group of people supporting Black Lives Matter when they interrupted Bernie Sanders. If you heard about it, there was a lot of backlash and like criticisms for why somebody who's supposedly very progressive should be interrupted, and again making those connections of like, somebody can be progressive, but it's very important to challenge someone to be more progressive and more inclusive of the issues that not just affects a certain group of people, but also like a very diverse group of people. And so again, that's something great that I've seen a lot of different groups of people coming together, people of color coming together and realizing there's like you can't advocate for the liberation of one group without actively advocating for the liberation of another group.
So one thing I got from Netroots and from how young people are advocating now in general is that we're saying that it's not just enough for you to have march with MLK for us to respect you in this movement if you haven't done anything in the last 3 decades to liberate anybody but yourself and your pocket. So I think young people are now no longer saying that, yeah, it's cool that you stand and you say you stand for progressive issues, but you haven't actually done anything. And so we're trying to hold people accountable, regardless if they look like us, don't look like us, have policy that represent us. We are really saying that at some point you need to put your body on the lines, just like young people are doing all across this nation, including still in Ferguson.
Joaquin, I have a question for you. How do you think through the intergenerational challenges? So like if you have this next generation of leaders that are actively seeking agency, ways to contribute, to provide voice to the issues they're facing, how do you deal with older generations that have been fighting those same issues but want to see it done in a certain way? How do you kind of navigate the different generations that may have the same goal but see different tactics?
Well, I think in the Native community, there's a lot of respect for our elders, and we're very community-based and intergenerationally based. So I think there are differences, but most of the time, the advocacy that youth are doing is so respected, and I think there is that respect in finding ways to build upon what has been previously done by our elders and those that came before us, and then using their wisdom to drive that forward.
How about others? I mean, it seems like this morning that on the panel, something we didn't dig into that deeply is the generations in the room, and that whether it be Black Lives Matter or any kind of youth-driven movements, that there seems to be kind of like, no, do it this way, this is not the right way, or this is the right way. Kind of how have you all seen that play out in your roles on the ground, or also just from your view nationally? Jamira. I'm messing with you.
I try not to throw shade at elders, but one thing I will say, one of my questions from yesterday's panel is like recognizing when elders need to realize that young people are not only willing and ready to lead, but it's either you pass the baton or we're going to take it from you, because we're at the point where we can no longer be politically correct when we're trying to save lives. So I think there needs to be serious conversations that yes, there are things we can learn from you, but also we have something to contribute, and we're trying to make change. And we've moved the work in the last few months, if not the last few years, without the support of you. And so you either help us or you try to hinder the progress.
I feel like, the women's movement wouldn't have caught on without men in the room and say, you know what, we are in power. We can actually hire more women. We can do this. I think there is space here to have these oppressive systems.
For the live stream. Yes. For the live stream. Yes.
I have a question. I have a question is Jamira. You put fear in my heart as an older woman, 60 years old soon, that you would drop the mic and almost not accuse you of saying it, but I do accuse you of saying it. But I do believe that I believe that there can be any successful intergenerational approach. I believe that as young people, whether they were quote unquote the normal or not define that, because I think all of us have whatever we have. That we build on the historical encounters that we have had that have gotten us to this place of where we can even be in these quarters. And I believe that as we are here as leaders right now, that we have a responsibility to address racism that is at the crux of all of our issues. Our young people has it right that we need to use impacting us at this point in time, that we have to address that issue of fear, bringing the white man in the walls and in a lot of ways to keep us under their thumb, because they feel like we don't have any money of our own and we don't want to say no to them for the things that we know are right to do. So are you all each at this table? I have to tell you my truth, and this is the way forward for our people. I have to tell you my truth, and this is the way forward for our people, and these are the policies, and we are going to move this nation. By changing the educational structure, by changing the way in which we embrace immigration and all of those other laws, by changing the fact that, yes, you can take guns off the street. There's something different that has to be done today, but it's not us and them, it is us, ma'am. It is young and old. No matter what, and no matter what years are before us or behind us, we come together.
I think I heard a question.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. So I would say, no, I fully agree with you. I think it is definitely, the work can't happen without everyone at the table, both young and our seasoned adults. But I would say that also, when I said that either you ready to pass the baton or young people are going to take it, I didn't mean it in the sense that there aren't elders who are willing to work in collaboration. I mean it in the sense that there are elders who are detrimental to the movement, and we have to be honest with that. There are elders who are in places of power that are hindering young people from being able to make adequate change because they're more comfortable recognizing the power of their dollar and keeping their pocket the way it is. So I think if we're honest about who is detrimental to the movement in the space, both young and old, we can move some people out of the way and actually do some change work. But I'm a full believer that it takes intergenerational conversations for that work to be realized across the board.
I want to keep this thread going. Jameer or anyone else, can you talk through what that, maybe not even just the elders piece of it, but like what does it look like to push against a system and dismantle a system, or push against old ways of thinking? Like what has that look like? You don't have to name anything or name anyone. I think it's important for folks in the room and also looking to see what it looks like to challenge or try to launch a project or launch an idea, and it's either not popular or folks don't want to kind of go that deep.
Well, in regards to a system, my last job before I joined Amnesty, I worked in the mayor's office in Philadelphia leading the youth commission, and we were able to identify young people from all different backgrounds across the city who were willing to work in collaboration with city council members to create policy. That is generational collaboration. That's taking young people who haven't been elected to office, who have experienced some real trauma, some real issues, and asking them to work in collaboration with people who have the real power. So we're talking about like what is going against the norm. It's placing young people in places of power where they can make change and actually change that they can see. So it's not just saying we're going to hear your ideas and we're going to write it down on a board, but we're going to actually write policy that's reflective of those changes, and you're going to see it impacted in your community.
Given the low percentages of people our age who actually vote, how are you engaging our peers around specific policy agendas or around specific policies that can improve our communities?
So I think, again, on immigration, the biggest thing that I think a lot of people face is the fear of saying I'm undocumented, because it can have a lot of negative repercussions, saying that you're undocumented. But at the same time, it's also one of the most empowering things you can do. I think the most immediate thing that anyone can do is feeling empowered, and I think that's a big reason for why a lot of people our age don't vote, is that they don't think that their vote can make a difference. In my type of advocacy, it's empowering undocumented people and also allowing them to share their personal narratives, because personal stories, I think, are like very key. They're very powerful, and they change the narrative of what any like stereotype or like what an issue looks like, because you humanize an issue. And once you humanize an issue, it's much more harder for someone who has no connection to the issue to ignore it. And that's been what I've been doing a lot, like encouraging my friends who are undocumented, showing that the more you're open about who you are, the more you lose that fear of whatever holds you back. And I'm also kind of, I don't think any change happens just by voting, because I think that's very simply voting someone in office is not gonna immediately, even if they make nice promises of like, I will like reform the criminal justice system, I will pass immigration reform. Like, those are nice promises that have been done like always since this country was founded. And so it's beyond just like voting, it's also holding these leaders accountable. And I think that goes back into the empowering people to know that their voice and their stories do matter, and that even if they do vote, that they have to go beyond that, and like in holding like these elected officials, even not just elected officials, people like us, accountable to ensuring that we are constantly thinking of like pushing people beyond their comfort zone, and that's very important.
Yeah. I mean, let's unpack that, because I think to say that young people don't vote is a lie. I think, are we talking about presidential elections? Are we talking about local elections? Because we know that Obama wouldn't have gotten office without the power of young people. But what I will say is that youth vote has actually risen over the last decade. So I think yes and no, young people are voting, but young people have a distrust for government. And they have a distrust for government because it's the idea that you're corrupt, you're here just to take money, you're not really going to do any impactful work. And I think the key is not just about like who are they voting for. Voting is who are they voting for. So how do we elect more young people who share our values, who share our issues and concerns? And also I would say that by 2016, young people will be 40% of the voting bloc. We will surpass the baby boomers in more than $2 trillion in spending power. So I think it's about understanding our power and how that plays a role in who we're electing, but also how we hold them accountable once they're in office.
And in the Native space, I think it's an important point to realize and make the connection that historically and currently the Native vote is trying to be excluded on purpose at the state level. Legal actions in place, especially in places like South Dakota, placed away from reservations, away from tribal nations. So natives are in Republican states a lot of times. So I think finding mechanisms just so Native people needs to be taken into consideration.
And speaking for young Latinos, at least, you can rest assured that we will be going to the election booth in very large numbers, all thanks to Donald Trump. And so when you have fools like Donald Trump having such a megaphone and getting the coverage that he's getting, calling our people rapists and criminals, that is a very negative way to get people out to vote, but it's a very effective way to get people out to vote. And so every conversation that I have at the dinner table with my nieces and nephews that are, from like 23 on down, even though they can't vote, they're like, oh, there's no way in hell Donald Trump is getting to the White House because we're going to stop that. So there's another way to get people to vote.
I think we have to unpack the thing about the relationship with young people and elders. My great-grandmother raised my mother, and my great-grandmother herself was a slave up until she was 12 years old. My mother just passed away 2 years ago. She was 97. When I started this work about 15 years ago, I know I've met young people who've been in this work longer than I have. So one of the challenges that I really want to put out there to young people as we have this conversation is that when I started this work, I didn't know how we even got a mayor in our community. I didn't know how we got school boards elected gay. So she was a model for me, and I was in spaces and I had a voice a lot of times. But the point is that what we're working for, and I'll say what I'm working for now, is to create a space in schools where I see white children. You're right, white children are there, but our children are not, And so what we're looking at as elders is how do we get you all to that place, where you can. And like my sister, I don't, I have sisters and brothers that are older than me that have retired, and I thought about that, like what they do, I like that a little bit, I want to do that. So I'm personally going to say to you that it's not that we don't want to pass it on to you. We may not know how to pass it on, we may not, whatever, but for young people to think that, and I know I don't think the young people in this room, but the level of disregard that we as elders are getting in this space, I lost a good job, to do this and worked a year because it was out of a need, like you say, stuff was going on, and I ended up, finding out who to talk to and advocating and stuff like that, not knowing that this could eventually be a job or had to be my career, so we were at the kitchen table, so those of us in our generation that you're looking at now, because the one before me, they're pretty much gone, and they're leaving. So speaking for us, it's not that we don't want that. We need to know from you, what do you need to do that? And then we need you to be in a conversation with us, because even as we start youth groups, the thing is, it's getting acceptable in the country. And I think I heard a level of regard when if you notice how he responded, it was that was the way that they were, there was a level where elders have a place. In our African American communities, our culture say that we were supposed to have a place. But the height is given in that it gives young people the right to say things to us, or I've gone into meetings where I was left standing up, or I was going to a meeting and there was a lot of things being said, and I accepted, but it's going to take us both working together. And the spirit of it is, and if I could say what she's saying, take it from us. It's not that we don't want to pass the baton on. What do we need to do to help you to receive the baton and to help us to be able to just give that baton on, because we want to, we need to, because you are the solutions, and we'll be the big speakers of that, And the work we're doing is to prepare you for it. Because think about it, in our culture now, we haven't had this pathway, even that the Native Americans have given their children. Even in the Latino community, they've given some things that we just came in a different way. We're still trying to teach our history to our children. To say that you are the best of the best, you can be the brightest. You were the ones that did it. Education, black folks, we got public education. So it's so much stuff that hasn't been taught and shared that then we're getting kind of bad side of it. And like I said, this helped us to figure that out. But while we're doing it, let's do it together with a little regard for folks.
Thank you. And if I think you had your hand up first right there with the question.
How y'all doing? I'm hearing the same questions over and over again. I don't think they're saying like disregard. You're not pushing back like in a disrespectful manner as older adults. So I was just sitting there and listening. Just on my background, I was in a mentoring program my whole life. My mom died when I was 12, so my leadership role took off early. So probably before I was 12 years old, I was doing adult stuff. We asked, how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it? I was in the national mentoring program, and it's easy. One of the younger people said, and as a younger person, we need to do it too, because the argument for us, millennials, the next group is going to start saying the same thing. Right? Put us in the conversation. It's not rocket science. Have us in the room. Have us in the spaces. I should have bought a kid. I should have had I'm 26. I should have had a 14 or 15-year-old, to be honest. Because just like you said, I'm in Alabama. I got a cat. He's 19. So people took me in the back room and said, hey, man, we're going to vote for the governor. 12 years, whatever we need to do, this is the process we're going to make sure you go. And so I sit back and think about it. I've been going my whole life with mentoring work, advocating, going out helping and counseling people. And it wasn't by mistake. It was because they needed me. They threw me in the work to build me. I didn't actually do it. Y'all can't ask one of them. Either way. You teach these middle school students, so I thought we were bad.
But what I will say is that, MLK, Julian Bond, and John Lewis. And so we're not saying that we don't want to work in collaboration with elders. We're saying forefront of change, and we're just want to but what I will say is, that MLK, Julian Bond, and John Lewis. And so we're not saying that we don't. And so we're not saying that we don't want to work in collaboration with elders. We're saying forefront of change, and we're just want to we want to also. I see your statement. We talk about some later. We could definitely try to iron something out. And make sure it's on the.
In the back.
May I have permission?
No.
Practices, rituals, routines, culture, some traditions should not really be broken. I don't agree with everything, but I respect that. It's not taught. What are we doing with the mechanisms that we put in our culture gaps. We got names we would love to shout out right now. I'm not going to do it. I'm tempted. We're not me being conceited. That is me celebrating the best of God in me. In faces, British and consistently right on. I'll give everybody an idea. We have a new mayor coming in Philadelphia. Each city change for them. Be a world that God has and creating mechanisms to continue bridging the gaps. We got names we would love to shout out right now. I'm not going to do it. I'm tempted. We're not me being conceited. We're not me being conceited. That is me celebrating the best of God in me. We're not me being conceited. We're not me being conceited. We're not me being conceited. That is me celebrating the best of God. Not me being conceited. That is me celebrating the best of God in me. Faces, British and consistently right on. I'll give everybody an idea. We have a new mayor coming in Philadelphia. Each city change for them. Be a world faces, British and consistently faces, British and consistently right on. I'll give consistently right on. I'll give everybody an idea. We have a new mayor coming in Philadelphia. Each city change for them. Be a world that God. Each city change for them. Be a world that God has.
So what I'm saying is that, and I'm involved with a youth organization that we started.
Each city change for them. Be a world that God has. Be a world that God has.
So what I'm saying is that, and I'm involved with so what I'm saying so what I'm saying is that so what I'm saying is that, and I'm involved with a youth organization that we started 30 years ago, and that young folk you try to keep them up because of the area of the situation. Because of the area of the situation. When I was in there as a young person, a job through the work was able to go to college and through the work was able to go to college and I have a pension and I have a pension and I have a okay. My market my market on my house. Cut. That's on my house. Cut. That's me though. That's me. That's me though. That's me. That's me though. That's me. So I'm not that I keep before to that. Somebody said, I don't know who y'all, then you're taking up too much space. That I keep before to that. Somebody said, I don't know who y'all, then you're taking up too much that. Somebody to that. Somebody to that. Somebody said, I don't know who y'all, then you're taking up too much space.
Was it Tupac?
Then you're taking up too much space.
Was it Tupac? Was it Tupac? Was it Tupac?
Maybe y'all would think of asking yourselves. Maybe y'all would think of asking yourselves. Maybe y'all would think of asking yourselves as we do this work. Where are we and what we're doing? Not judging each other, but just still trying to connect, find something that we can connect with, and work like this paper and myself, like this paper and myself, like this paper and myself, paper and myself. I just want to say, I just want to say, I can continue. I can continue. I can continue. Last had meetings talking with folks, and she said, I'm so tired. Last had meetings talking with. Talking with folks, and she said, I'm so tired of y'all saying, y'all standing on my shoulder. Y'all had meetings talking with folks, and she said, I'm so tired of y'all saying, y'all standing on my shoulder. too heavy. Get off and walk on your own feet. So, y'all heavy. But I will continue to walk beside you as long as we can help each other. Comfort zone. Comfort zone.
Last question. Last question. Question.
I just want to thank who am I? Thank who am I? Job moves and I was able to work a couple years in corporate America, and I chose to quit. Job moves and I was able to work a couple years in corporate America, and I chose to quit my job and come back to my small town. I'm always fortunate if I've dealt with CEOs to come back to a small town